So we'll get to the status. So feedback from last week. Radio system module PR to be checked by end of the week. I got the code, so now I need to create a PR with this new code. There are some refactoring to do. There is some refactoring to do to the code because it's using some records, or it's supposed to use some records. We don't need records. There are no queries, and there are no queries. So I will push this code. The gallery, I heard back from Martin. He got my email and he asked for another question, and I don't know. Maybe he did it. I don't think so. He would have told me. Not yet. The only issue now is, in the meantime, there were new packages, so I will have to update database with those packages. That's a pain. Well, no, that will be okay. Just import export. So let me check status. System refactoring. Gallery almost set up. From last week, just to be sure I didn't forget anything, we talked about Orchard 2 theming. I have another demo for that. Benedek showed the fields. Identity, we decided what to do with Orchard 2. You get, oh, this is an ongoing PR. So status, demos. Sipke, are you ready for a demo today?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh.
I would like to have a short announcement.
Demos. What else? Am I missing something? Not from here. Topics. Anyone wants to talk about something? So I can give you an update on Orchard 2 theming plus caching because it's related. Somehow you will see why. I talked to Bertrand about what I found out during the last 2 days. I also talked to Daniel this morning because I wanted his insight about caching because he's working on caching a lot. And they confirmed what I was thinking, so now I can share it publicly to have more broader feedback. We'll see later. So status, let's look at the code. Code here. Someone asked me for the code, and then fixed placeholder size in Firefox. This is on the admin theme branch, so we won't care, I assume. Adding Git attributes. Okay. Then there is the Lombic Tornado. Adding Git attributes file to enforce command line ending configuration. So to be sure that during the commits, we use the same encoding, and when we check out, all the files are using. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the idea is when we commit something, when we push something, all our CRLF are converted to LF, the Unix style. And when we pull something, all the LFs are converted to CRLF because we're on Windows. So it will adapt automatically the line endings based on the system, right?
Yeah.
Yes, because of auto. And then what you did is you changed all the files to make them in the Git repository Unix-like, because this is how they are stored. The conversion happens only if you're on Windows, when you pull.
Yes.
Sure, that's what you did. Okay.
Yeah, and actually the conversion was necessary because when the repository was converted from Mercurial to Git, the files were the same. So after we started using the Orchard repository as a Git repository, the line endings got messed up a lot. And when you were editing files in Visual Studio, it would always complain about line endings, for example. So yeah, some of the files got converted along the way because people were updating them. But on the one hand, it was very hard to see the file diffs because these were messed up, and now they are normalized.
Okay, so there is a big impact that they saw and they took action. It's that, let's say, all the pull requests which were created before last week can't be merged anymore. For instance, let's take one. You see merge conflict, and then Zoltan sent a comment to any of the pull requests which were like this to explain that now you can't merge anymore because the line fixes are touching some lines that these PRs are also touching, so the merge is not automatic. And to fix that, so I tried this morning to see if it was hard or not, so I rebased one of my pull request on top of a more recent branch, like on top of 19x, and there were some merge conflicts, but then I say automatic merge and it was fine, so it found the issues automatically. I'm not sure. I'd like you to check actually, because I don't know how to check. I'm not sure if the merge kept the correct line endings or if it took my line endings, which might be wrong. I don't know. So if you can check this PR just to see, or should I commit it before you check?
Please paste the URL into chat and we'll take a look. But I think if you open one of the files in Visual Studio and it doesn't complain about line endings, then it's okay. But yeah, we'll check to make sure that the process is right. Thanks.
I'm wondering if this maybe fixes another issue that we've been seeing with the output of the gulp pipeline, where sometimes Git will say that there are changes to the JavaScript files, but there are no changes.
Probably.
Oh yeah, that's really painful, especially with gulp. Yeah. I'm not 100% sure because that's also affected by how gulp generates files. So that could be a matter of configuration. But yeah.
We can check. If we just run the gulp pipeline on TypeScript files, we'll see directly, because there are no changes. So if we run the gulp pipeline, it should not complain about changes. It should just render the same files. So we can try. So this is just to talk about this kind of important change, which impacts all the PRs. More line endings, styling in the admin theme, I assume. Layout editor.js. So this commit, maybe it has been reverted, or if not yet, should be reverted.
No, not yet. Yeah, it should be reverted, but the reason this was merged in is because it was to fix another reason. But I want to have a quick look after this meeting to figure out what's going on, and I will either revert or fix the current issue.
Yeah, so there is a problem, but the fix to this problem made the layout
unable to save issues.
You can't save anymore. So we have the quick fix is to revert this fix, or the good fix is to fix the original issue without breaking the layout save. So we'll see. And I put a comment, Sipke, on the PR about this thing, HTML raw URL.encode. So I don't know what's there, but configuration data doesn't look like URL. So maybe you wanted HTTP utility.javascript encode?
Maybe. I don't know.
I think so, because you see, you do decode. So it looks like some JSON object. I don't know. And if it's JSON object, this is HTTP utility JavaScript encode or JavaScript decode that you want. Maybe URL encode kind of works for some cases, but yeah.
There were so many issues with encoding and decoding and passing data over the query string, and at some point I got it to work with this code. So
Okay.
I'm afraid to change anything.
No,
But yeah, I can try.
I'm
See
interested
if it
to
works.
see
Or breaks.
what's in there. Yeah.
Sure.
This is styling. Don't care because we'll see a demo. Converting more CRLF. Normalizing some more line endings again. So let's check. Maybe now Lombic is the best contributor to Orchard.
We didn't intend to cheat or something like
No,
that.
that's right. That's right. Look at that. Boom.
Ooh, wow. Well,
2000.
Sipka is still,
With just 225 commits. You see?
Yeah, but we can't beat Sipka. It's just
Yeah, same thing. It's weird also. 500,000. It's probably like one commit. Let's commit the layout module. Boom. 1,000 lines of code with one commit. So I don't know. I'm just doing merges, so it doesn't count. But I lost the full story here because of name changes. So normalizing some more line endings, merge into dev, more conversions, fixing line endings. So we'll see. Last time I did that on a project, it messed up with everyone in the team. Every time I would like to commit something, it will complain about line merges. I don't know why. And then that's it. No specific features. Okay. Questions about the changes? Nope. Thing here, charging car. Okay. Do you want some batteries? I have some 1.5 volt batteries. It's me. Okay. No questions. Demos. Benedek, you want to start with your announcement? Maybe
Oh yeah, it's very short. I don't even need to share my screen.
What?
So what I wanted to say is that we have left the sinking ship, and we no longer host our open source projects on Codeplex. We have migrated all our projects to Bitbucket because we still use Mercurial, and that's where we host our projects. But also since we have this awesome tool called Git AG Mirror, we also have all our open source repositories mirrored to Git on GitHub. So these two URLs show you the Bitbucket ones are all Mercurial, the GitHub ones are obviously Git. So those are all our open source projects.
So when you said sinking ship,
I refer to Codeplex.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Sipke, let me make you presenter.
Okay, sharing desktop. I don't know which one to choose. Oh, this one. This one. So over the last couple of weeks, except for the last week, I've been working on a new admin theme based on a theme that Daniel and I found. And Simon, I think he's from Prologence, friend of and colleague of Piotr. He's working on it as well, and I'll show you progress. So currently it looks like this. It's work in progress. The colors, of course, these will be either configurable or you'll be able to choose a pre-baked style sheet. But I'll walk you through the menu because it's different. For example, we could now. This is, by the way, all optional. Nothing is set in stone. I'm showing the current progress just to gather feedback and initial thoughts. I think all of you, this is the first time you are seeing this. But personally, I like it. It's based on Bootstrap. It looks very fresh and modern, and also it's very responsive. So you can work with Orchard on a mobile phone now, which I think is good. It's modern, as I mentioned. Yeah, let me start from the top left. So this is a logo. I just took the existing one, the sketchy one. I like that personally, but
Is
like I
it
said,
touch friendly?
I think so. I didn't try.
Don't you have a touch screen?
Is it Bootstrap 4?
No,
Oh, it's 3.
No,
We
this
agreed on
is-
3.
I think this is 3, but
Yeah,
I
this
have
is
to
sure.
check.
No, this is sure. This is 3 because we agreed on 3 for some reasons, explicit reasons, which are
Yeah,
not. Bootstrap 4 is not yet there.
I didn't check. I assume it's 3, but I
Telling
will
you,
have to
yeah.
confirm.
Or redo everything.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, so what we have also is a top menu, which comes with this theme. There's no option to remove the top menu, but maybe it's nice. You can show a nice gravatar, for example, and optionally some user-specific settings. I'm not sure if we will do something with this. I'm just leaving it in for now to, get some inspiration. It could be a link to your user account. So some settings could be linked, maybe some recent content items that you've been working on, for example. Yeah, just gathering some ideas. Maybe we can put some more techie stuff in the top menu, for example, content types and content parts, as opposed to putting it in this left menu. That's just an idea that we could consider. This menu itself, it scrolls along with the window, but it could be configured to be fixed. So that's an option. And I'm thinking that we may want to introduce some theme settings where you can configure things like that, where the menu is sticky or not. And yeah, and each menu has this dropout. So instead of remember the accordion in the current theme, instead of that thing expanding, we'll now have a fly out menu. So now it's easy. For example, if you go to content, you can easily filter by pages or projections or any other content type that you have in the system. Like I think a while ago we discussed this with Daniel, a similar approach where you could quickly select the content type.
I'm so
content
glad I
tree.
never got around to it.
Content tree. This is the solution.
Yeah.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
are several modules on the gallery that do that.
You have one,
Yeah.
Bertrand, don't you?
Yeah, content
I
tree.
have two.
Two content trees.
Yeah, there is the
And-
tree, and there is another module that just does exactly what you're doing here, which is add content types under the content header.
Yeah.
So
So
What you
functionally
did,
the same.
is it hard coded or is it based on a provider? What you did right now?
Oh,
Or is it just the theme?
the-
You just it's just the
Yeah,
theme
it
which will
isn't-
provide all the types. That's it. Because
Yeah.
what Bertrand did is like it's a provider of menu, so that anyone can provide dynamically a tree of data to filter on. Like the taxonomy will provide a list of taxonomies under a taxonomy node. So you will say content taxonomies, and then you click on a taxonomy type to see all the taxonomies of this pipe, or something like that. I don't know.
Maybe that would be cool.
Well,
to
Orchard 2.
have that.
Orchard 2. Yeah, we can talk about it, but right now we don't have to do that. Focus on the theme, yeah.
Yeah, the initial goal is to just port everything to
Yep.
this new styling
Right. And then
and make
improve.
it backwards compatible and then improve, exactly. Because some things look good out of the box straight away. For example, this dashboard, I like it. Other things are typically Orchard screens. For example, this content list.
This is
It-
what I wanted to see. Beautiful.
It is okay, but I think it could be better.
Yeah, at
maybe.
least it's the same, but it's better. More
But
powerful.
it is. Yeah, I think it's better. And we have nice modern checkboxes.
And this
and-
page, you converted it to the new tagging.
The new tagging? Oh, yeah. The HTML has changed a bit. Yeah. So my strategy is to optimize the HTML of the out-of-box modules, but add some sort of adapters style sheet so that existing modules, third-party modules, still look good in this new theme. Maybe not optimal, but as good as they can get.
Can we see one that hasn't been converted?
Sure. So this has been recoded. The content editor, certain parts have been changed. For example, the title part, outer part, layout part. I didn't have to do anything for the layout part, so that Daniel did a great job here. It's nicely isolated. Except for this, I had to remove the bullets, which is good now. This I changed. This I
like to see a
updated.
list, like the content list, but without any change.
Yeah. I'm afraid I also updated the content types list already. What would be a good list?
Tags, comments, workflows, or you changed everything
Workflows.
already?
No, no. Just content types, content parts, content, and maybe Simon worked on something else. I'm not sure, but we can go. Do you know the URL of
Well,
workflows?
usually I go on the left menu and I click workflows.
Yeah, so this is hard coded. Everything you see here.
Oh, okay.
It's not dynamic yet.
Okay, well, that's fine.
Workflows. Maybe it works. Ah, there you go. So this is current. So I'm not working on the adaptive style sheet yet.
Well, you should before you do the change.
Yeah, I should, but I wanted some initial looks to see how it could be, and then I will save some. This could be a good example to work as a test bed for the adaptive style sheet. I will do that for this and others. At least I have not right now. We have a good starting point with this screen and the content list. Yeah.
Great.
So yeah, so that's currently what we have.
So you
content
support
parts.
tabs?
Tabs, yeah. This Simon implemented the local nav.
For the content types, but because you also worked in the past weeks on the tabs in the placement.
Tabs in yes, so that will I should try, but that will work the same. I think it uses the local nav shape as well, so that should already work. But I will try.
Matthias is mentioning the breadcrumb. Is it something which is hard-coded in each view?
At this point, yes, and I think every module should itself.
Yeah, that's okay.
So we would just expose some sort of API where you can populate the menu items because there's no way to automatically generate breadcrumbs, I think, because certain things are based on very module-specific items. For example, pages. This is this is part of the route, but maybe we want more specific stuff being part of a thing. Maybe. I haven't thought it through yet, but that was my initial thinking.
Top banner.
Top banner?
Is it two shapes?
What do you mean?
Because it will have to the top menu plus the top header. Sorry, the header. Yeah, this thing, the green thing. So it needs to be two shapes or maybe three, one containing the two others, so that any view could add positioned element to these shapes.
Yes, exactly.
Or any module could add position element to these shapes. Like you enable a search module, you could inject the search text box at the top one because it's just a zone in the main layout of the admin. So I can add something with a position.
Yeah.
You see, like everything could be provided by a module then, and people could extend that with more things.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe keep this menu, and that could be
make it a layout
extended.
zone. Make it a layout zone or two layout zones.
Right.
See,
maybe a left one and a right.
Yeah. With positioning, and then everything is added as a shape in these zones, so people can add more things like a search box.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good idea. I think that's
great.
Yeah.
Did you measure the response time? I don't know if you can measure that to render that.
I didn't measure, but I just clicked around and compared it with the current theme, and it's snappy on my machine at least. But I didn't look at the developer tools.
No,
but I will
do that.
I will do that.
I don't even know how it works. So in a page like that, when you resize it to
oh yeah, yeah. That's so this is for bigger screens, tablets, and then there's a. This is because I have too many items here at this point. I need to look into changing this breakpoint or fixing it at least. But so when you go small enough, it changes to this breakpoint, where the menu changes using this hamburg.
And yeah, obviously we can change the views to also use the breakpoints. And like on this view, we could say, well, when on a mobile phone, we don't want to display the stereotype and just the type, and that's okay.
Well, maybe, yeah, because if you're surrounded with certain CSS classes and those CSS, yeah, so that should be.
Bootstrap, so we can do that. Okay. Good.
Yeah. That's the beauty of this approach, not just the look and feel, but also the fact that it's Bootstrap. So yeah, and this is that menu, and this is the title of the page, and here's the left, the right menu. Oh, the top menu. Yeah, this is the top menu. Like that. Yeah.
Okay, maybe we also need another menu definition for the top one if we want to expose it. Today we have main. Well, we have a name one. We have admin. We could have admin top to provide something in the top, and that would work.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea actually. But as you mentioned, I'm just gonna port it first, and then we're gonna improve and maybe even improve the menu API, backwards compatible, of course. But because I think there was some discussion about how this works. There's two kind of ways, two APIs to populate the menu. So maybe that will be a good time to look into that as well. But yeah.
Okay, good. Great. Continue.
Will do.
Questions for Sipke? No questions for Sipke. So I can present again. Present. So first a little demo. I started the server. Let me show you some status. Do the status on Orchard 2. Quickly, there aren't many changes. So this is Orchard, this is Porchard. And in the last 7 days, so I do an update on Thursday. So I updated SQL to make it faster. Some optimizations, some optimization in the code to remove stuff that we had specifically for MVC5, but that doesn't apply to MVC6 anymore, like converting an HTML string to a dynamic object or a shape, which is not necessary anymore. Also, I created some kind of admin page. Let me show you. This is the only demo for Orchard 2 today. So this is this is also the default theme. So I made a theme just to play with it, and I'm linking to the online Bootstrap CSS and JavaScript. This index page, like before, you type some text, it will create a content item with the text and return the view of the content item. And there is another module which is actually a theme. So it's theme. Okay, the themes module, which has a crap. I have to remember. It should tell me actually. Yes, theme index. So this page is showing a form, and when I change a value and submit, it will update the site settings with the setting named current theme on the content item of the site itself, and this is what is used to render the theme. So there is another one which I explained here, which is a safe mode, so the default fallback theme, which is just empty, and when I submit, it will save it in the site settings, but the next request will look at the site settings to load which theme to render, and it renders using the safe mode theme. So we can persist the theme, and just to show that the theme selector pipeline is working in this case based on the data access. So if I go back to, or if I go to the index page, demo, trust me, but if I go back there, the theme submit, it's persisted again, okay? And it was fast. Click, boom, change the theme, reapplied, and still it's slow because I have enabled the log. So every single line is logged in the console, which makes things slower. So it's pretty. That's all for the code. Then discussions on Gitter, on Twitter, by email, by Skype with people about theming, because when I was there, I'm like, okay, now I have a basic theme. Actually, I have the project for managing the theme. Let's work on the actual admin theme or the front-end theme, and let's see what we can do, what we should change. So lots of discussions. First discussion was, should we use React, Angular? Should we make things? Should we make the full admin theme reactive? Should we make the front-end theme default one reactive too? What library should we use? So things like that. And everyone has opinions, obviously, which is good. So what do you people think? Because I have my conclusion I will share with you. We can still change the conclusion, but Jamie Philippe, we use React. Benedek says Angular. So these are the two, the most recurring suggestions. Daniel says Angular 2. Then we have Angular, React 4, Ryan, Plastic. Yeah, okay. Well, people also mention, for instance, what's the name of the one that the guy from Durandal did, the Ember thing, who joined Angular team and then left the Angular team?
Aurelia,
thank you. Some people suggested this one too. Virtual DOM, so yeah. Some people also suggested Polymer directly, but there were two kind of discussions, like using an MMVVVCC whatever client, or also something which can base on components like React. I don't really understand all the subtleties between those two, but yeah, these were the React versus Angular mostly. So we all agree that we should use a framework like this because this is the trend. It simplifies some things. It enables some scenarios. We need reactive UI in many places. Then the question is, do we just do things using a reactive UI, or do we do it as the Orchard one way, which is server-side rendering? And do we do also a mix of that, like reactive UI and server-side? So the conclusion based on different drawbacks from each of the solutions is to use, I think, like we do on Orchard one, which is a mix of server-side templating, server-side rendering, and also client-side reactive UI. The idea being that if we go full server-side, like we don't even do today in Orchard, we can't provide reactive UI. It's just post back and rebind everything on the client side, and that's not a good experience, at least for the admin. Then if we do fully reactive, not fully responsive, fully reactive, it means that everything is driven by APIs on Orchard side. So Orchard is just an API, and then you can create a completely distinct admin application that will communicate with Orchard through APIs and render and communicate with the customer, with the user using the client framework. And we can also do a completely decoupled front end using any framework you want. The issue with that is that we would lose theming, composition also of the shapes, because there is no more shape to use. We are just rendering JSON. We could render some HTML, but that's not the goal of using a client framework. So we are losing lots of things. And also for authentication and security, there are many things we will lose by just forgetting about the theming story of Orchard and how it renders templates and finds templates. So in the end, I think using what Drupal calls progressive decoupling is the solution. Meaning, like Orchard one, there will be an admin theme that will render templates based on shapes, but whenever you need to create some UI which is reactive, like we do in the layout, like we do in the media or the navigation by drag and dropping things, we can use and we will use a client framework to do that. So the module developer will be able, on the admin side at least, to create any view based on the client framework. We won't make everything based on the client framework. For instance, I don't see any reason to make the admin menu being based on the client framework. It can just be generated and cached, and that's okay. But if the pages can and will use the reactive framework, we should do that. Please interrupt me with questions if I'm missing something or you don't agree.
I think what you just said about Drupal is, to me, sounds like the best solution, right? Because if we forget about the theme engine, then you've just alienated a large base of your users and almost custom tailored the whole CMS to just being for developers.
This also means when you create a module, you don't provide a default rendering on the website. Like, let's say you enable the blogs module. Yeah, you have enabled the blogs module. Please create blog posts, but you can't see them in the front end. You have to build the front end. So you lose many features that a module could provide. At the same time, and I have examples for that. If you want to build a completely decoupled front end, like we have toyota.co.za, which has been built like that. The Halo website is built like that. Orchard has a content management and the front end is a completely decoupled, not using the theme engine, then you can still do that. And the goal I envision for Orchard 2 is that we will build a default theme based on server-side rendering like the theme machine. So the same technique, I'm not saying it will be the theme machine, I'm just saying server-side rendering from A to Z. And this will provide a way to have a working website. But I'd also like to have another theme which is kind of completely decoupled, just to show that it's doable, that to have using any client framework we want. We'll choose one and we'll provide a theme for that just as a proof of concept, but also which will force us when we create a module to build the correct APIs for the front-end developers to be able to consume the data from this module. So if we have the two themes, which will ensure that we provide a way, at least one way, if it's not complete, to display the content. And hopefully everyone will be happy with that. But on the back end, we will just support, like we do in Orchard 1, a static website plus reactive pages when needed. It also means that, so I hope everyone agrees with the decision. It's safe, and at the same time, it's still open to everything. You can still do completely decoupled front ends. So I think it should be fine. At the same time, because of that, we then need to choose which framework we want to use. Okay, React, Angular are the most recommended. I think based on what I heard the past week that we can't decide to choose any other one but Angular or React. And I will say maybe Angular 2 and React, because everyone seems to agree with that. If you do some Google Trends, it's just about them, React and Angular. And we need to choose. We can't say it's any one of them. We have to decide on the admin what we will use. Sure, any module developer could use another one, but we should ensure that in the core we decide what we are using, at least for the next few years, until there is a new contender and we decide now this one is ubiquitous, the one we chose is completely useless, we should change it. But we should decide for the next years and what we'll use. I'm still not decided on that, and I don't decide. I've just thought about the pros and cons for every one of them, but right now people suggest React and Angular, and we need to be safe not to take one that everyone will have to learn. Like, who has ever done something using plastic? I don't know what plastic is, but I assume maybe just Nick or maybe someone else. But if everyone has to learn that, or it's not as used in the community as the others, then you won't have any feedback, any support, and everything. So we need to be conscious about that. So yeah, there are pros and cons for React and Angular, but maybe it will be another discussion and maybe a vote. I don't know. Personally, I think Angular 2 will be the kind of my my choice because React seems weird with mixing templating in the JSX file, like mixing HTML and script at the same time. It looks weird. Angular 2 is the most, well, Angular is the most popular one, and Angular 2 will definitely be the most popular one. And I'm not judging features. I don't know which one is better than the others in doing things. I have no idea. Just looking at the community and what people use today. But I assume we'll do a vote because it's a pretty big decision and it will impact the next few years technology that we use. Then questions about that? Good. Then I mentioned in the here that I wanted to talk about theming plus caching. So the decision about the client framework impacts the theming. Well, actually, the theming discussion led to the client framework usage. So we agree that will be progressive decoupling, and that will support also full decoupling for the front end. This will be good, and that will have APIs. And then I was reading an article about Drupal 8. I tweeted about it. Maybe Antoine will paste the link because Antoine is very good at pasting links. So from Dries, the creator of Drupal, who last week was writing about explicitly decoupling Drupal 8 or next version of Drupal using a client framework. And he was also pointing to some links to caching and what they improved in terms of performance and reactiveness in the UI for Drupal 8. And there were some very, very interesting ideas. Also surprises, things that we are doing in Orchard that they were not doing and that seem obvious. But at the same time, they have done something in Drupal 8 that I think will be very interesting for Orchard too in terms of caching. So let me give you a summary about that to see what you think. And I'm sure you will agree. I talked about it to Bertrand and Daniel already, and they agreed with the ideas, the concepts. So the idea is that we will have, like we have in Orchard 1, an output cache that will store the full page that is rendered to the client, but in memory somewhere, and will be served for mostly anonymous users. Okay, this one is the best thing we can do for performance. Just cache everything and render it directly, like a static file. Boom, render. Actually, Drupal 8 didn't have that. They just enabled it by default. Well, Drupal didn't have that. They enabled it by default in Drupal 8. And they realized that from 10 requests per second, you could get 150 requests per second or something like that. But what they did also, they did something called dynamic page cache, which is, if we had to convert it to our domain model, will be called shape caching, dynamic shape caching. The idea is that in Drupal 8, they are forcing the module developers, when they create shapes, they call them render arrays in Drupal. By the way, shapes, whatever you see in Orchard has been inspired by Drupal. So when we have shapes, it's because they have rendered array and so on and so forth. So what they do is that they impose developers to provide for each node in their render array tree or in our shape, they impose them to provide some cache metadata. Meaning when in Orchard you will create you will render a menu shape from the menu driver. You will also, with the shape properties, which is the type, the shape metadata, the alternates, you will also provide the cache invalidation time, like permanent. You will provide some cache ID. You will provide some cache context, which will vary each of the values or the versions of the cache value. For instance, the user can be a context, which means for this shape, there will be a different content for each user. Or you can say role as a context, meaning for each different role of the user, there will be a value. If the user is administrator, it will have this value. If the user is anonymous, it will have this value, and so on. So you can share the state of your cache per context. We were doing it in Orchard 1 by adding these values as the keys in the ID, but I think their idea of separating the ID and the context is better. And you can also provide the the tags, like we do in Orchard 1. Meaning for each shape, you will describe what tag will invalidate the state of this cache. For instance, the content items that the shape is rendering, or the user if it's using some user state. This way, whenever we change something, there will be a signal, like in Orchard 1 output cache, to invalidate all the cache states that are tagged with this tag. And the idea being that everything is in cache until one of its dependencies has changed. Like we do for the output cache, but at the shape level. This is very important for performance. For both anonymous and authenticated users. Let's use the anonymous example first. So let's do a pause. Does anyone have questions? Because I'm just talking and everyone's following. Can I continue? Good. I'm not reading the chat. If there is something interesting in the chat or some questions about that, just interrupt me, please. So shape caching with anonymous user and the output cache. Let's say we have enabled the output cache like today. We cache the full page. We go on the home page, the page is fully cached, it's very fast. Boom. Now we go on page 1. This one has not been cached yet, so the cache is cold, it's not warm. So what we'll do, we will render everything again, render the menu, render the body, render the widgets and everything, and cache everything and render it. But now if we have dynamic shape cache enabled, we might have cache, well, by going on the home page first, the menu has been rendered, and the menu is a shape. And it varies by user, let's say. So it has been cached for the anonymous user. So we already have the shape for the menu cached for the anonymous user. So when we go on page 1, we have to render the full page because there is no output cache. But when we are about to render the menu shape, the menu is already cached, so we don't have to render it anymore. So even though the page itself is not in cache, some pieces of it are already in cache, so we don't have to build them again, and they are in good state. I mean, they haven't been, they are not stale. They are fresh data. They are actual data. So we can retrieve this shape from the cache and build the full page based on these fragments of shape cached. And in the end, we build the full page, we store it in the cache, and we can serve it. So the next time we go on page 1, we'll have the full page. Okay, we don't have to reuse the shape cache. So the output cache and the shape cache are not mutually exclusive. We can use both of them. We can just use the output cache. We can just use the shape cache if you want, or we can use both of them at the same time. And this will be best for the performance. Now, let's say we have an authenticated user. We can't use the output cache anymore. At least I don't recommend to use the output cache anymore. But if the shape cache is enabled, then every piece, again, the menu is based on each user. Let's say the menu is based on each user. Then we can cache the shape, the menu shape, per user, and then the first page that user hit will build the menu, but then we don't need to build the menu again for this user. Or if you have a widget which shows some user-specific data like links based on its holes, or his money that he wants to spend on a casino website, things like that that are not common to every page, then we can cache them, and the page will be rendered much faster. So this is not a new technique. Some people were doing that already in Orchard 1. We have the ALC website, which was the first to do that with Chris. I can't remember his name again. I know that Big Gaming has something like that. I know that Jeff also is doing some caching for the shapes, and maybe some other, I don't know. So this is not a new technique, but I think we should provide it out of the box in Orchard 2, and like Drupal is doing, have it first class in the shapes so that we can provide cache metadata. At the same time, because it's shape metadata, and it will be provided by drivers, we have a way to enrich or modify dynamically those metadata, because maybe the module developer will say that a menu is or is not dependent on the user context, and maybe you in your development you want it to be or not to be dependent on the user context to optimize it for your scenario. So what you will just have to do is either a module implementing a content handler to say when the shape menu is displayed, update the context by adding that or removing that or add a new tag. So you can modify the shapes and the alternates, you can also modify the cache metadata for every shape to make it more adapted to your scenario and to your load. So that's why I think it should be in Orchard 2 first class. Then there is a third concept that that can take place here. Let's say we are in the admin and we have the menu. The menu in the admin is user specific because it's based on the roles, but it never changes. It changes only when the user changes itself, when the roles and the permissions change, when the features change. Okay, this is how we will invalidate the menu admin. So we can cache it. We can cache the admin menu, and we can define some tags so that they are based on the user, the roles, and the features. Okay, but we can cache it in two locations. We could cache it on the server side, or we could cache it on the client side. The idea is that instead of taking memory for each user on the server, if the user has a high cardinality, we could delegate the storage on the client side in the local storage of the browser. This way, not only the server doesn't have to build it again because it's cached, but it doesn't even have to send the value with the body and just send a placeholder saying, please render the stuff called admin menu. Okay, and then this is just some JavaScript which on the client side will take it from the local storage and render it if it's there, or do an async request to load it after the body is fully downloaded, saying, no, I don't have this thing that you are asking me to render, so let me do a request to get it. Or if we know that it has never been rendered, we can also render it with the first body. So then there is the issue about cache invalidation. How does the client know that this menu has been invalidated because either the user, the roles, or the features have changed? How they do that in Drupal, because again, this is an idea from the Drupal articles I've read in Drupal 8, is they are when they send the menu to the client, they give it a hash. The hash being based on all the variable that will invalidate the data. For instance, if we were about to build a real hash, we will have to rebuild the menu on the server side, create a hash, and compare it to the client side. But then there is no cost, there is no gain because it's just the HTTP transport that we gain. So what we need to do actually is a cheap cache, something that is easily created. So what they do is they will store, let's call it a serial number for the user. Like, let's say I create my user is version 1, and as soon as I will change my name or the roles I'm assigned to, I will be version 2, and so on. Whenever the roles have changed, they increase also the version. Roles version 3, roles version 4. Same thing for features. Whenever a feature is changed, we change an integer describing the serial number of the features. We say 5, 6, 7. So in the end, we have 3 integers which will be used to compute a hash for the menu invalidation. And this hash is very easy to compute on the server side, and we'll send it every time with every request on the client side. So the client knows if its own menu hash is the same as the server hash. And if it finds there is a difference in this request, then it will say, okay, I need to reload the menu and reissue an AJAX request to get the new menu and store it again. So this means that we will need another kind of settings or some events so that modules can provide or infer some serial numbers for different contexts that are used for cache invalidation. And well, this should be also pretty easy, but this will give a way for us to store cache data on the client, and it will be mostly called personalization data, like something that only this client needs, or maybe something that we can delegate to the user and we don't need to all the users, and we don't need to store on the front end, on the back end, sorry, on the server. So to be seen. And it also enables the scenario, which is that we could detect it automatically based on some cache metadata, that we can store this thing on the client. So actually, from a module developer perspective, it will just be a metadata saying, oh, this shape can be on the client. And then the framework, the cache framework, when it will try to render this shape, will note that, and instead of storing it on the server side, will create the correct JavaScript and hash values sent to the client to say that this thing needs to be stored on the client. So it can be completely independent from a model developer perspective, and it can be also provided as a feature. So if you don't want it, you can disable it and put all the cache on the shape cache on the server side. At the same time, Daniel was suggesting, well, we can also decide to just invalidate it temporarily because we want to debug what's happening and we need to see everything. So we will just render the menu every time and disable this feature like this. So that's the idea. We have three and a half different concepts that we can implement for caching, which will make the websites much faster. There is another feature that they implemented in Drupal 8, which is called BigPipe. It's a Facebook protocol to have HTTP connection kept alive while the first body is sent very fast, the output cache, and then all the missing pieces are using the same connection streamed to the client to push all the data asynchronously. And it's like using SignalR, using one request to push all the different pieces, which will take different times, the different shapes, sorry, which will take different times to render. And from a user's perspective, he can see most of the content very fast, very quickly, and then everything is coming after without creating more requests from the client. This is, again, another feature that we can implement later, and that will be compatible with what we're doing. Yeah, that's the whole picture.
So my question is, how much is HTTP 2.0 going to affect whatever we're doing here?
Everyone is asking this question. Good question. So the idea with the BigPipe protocol is that it's the fourth feature to implement, and it can be implemented in different way. It can be implemented using just pure sending JavaScript content after the body, using the same connection. It can be implemented using HTTP2. If the client and the browser, if the client and the server support it, it can be using WebSockets. We could use BigPipe, which is a protocol itself. We could use SignalR to do that. So we have different implementations that could be done. And if I'm sure we can imagine a solution implementing HTTP2. And if you know that your clients and your server support HTTP2, enable HTTP2 because you think it's faster for you. But if it doesn't, then maybe we need the SignalR one, or maybe we need none of them because you don't want that. So I expect that we should be able to provide different implementations based on these different protocols.
Sounds cool.
Other questions?
It does seem like a lot of different options. The question is, you have limited resources.
That's a day of work. And you always have to multiply whatever I say by 2, so it will actually be 2 days.
For 200 developers.
No, well, the output cache is done. Okay, we just need to make it a no-win middleware, which will already have partially in Orchard 1. So output cache done and done. We know everything we need to build in output cache is the same thing that we have in Orchard 1. Then the dynamic shape cache, it's very easy to do. Imagine what I told you. We just need a bunch of properties on the shape metadata, and we just need to intercept the display to cache it. We already have some code to do that. People have done that. And then we need just to render that dynamic. And then there is the third level, which is more clever to be able to support the hashes. So it's not that hard. It's 4 different features. The fourth one, I won't do it right away, okay? The pipelining the result later. I don't really care right now. But we can implement the output cache, the dynamic shapes, and the local storage very easily, actually. It will take some days, but it's not that complex. Very simple concepts. And we all.
I have a question. So just for my understanding, taking the menu widget as an example, if that menu widget shape has been created, then and that shape is being cast and rendered, that's fast. But how would the system wouldn't know that it's going to create that menu widget shape beforehand, would it? Because the widget filter will execute the layer rules, then it knows about the widget content items, and it will invoke the build display method on the content manager. And only after those after that code is executed, the system knows what the shape will be, or unless I'm missing something. And I think that is the most expensive code, more expensive, more time-consuming than rendering the resulting shape, I think. Oh, well, that's not entirely true, because that's an hierarchy of shapes. But anyway, I was just wondering about that.
At some point, widget will find the widget filter will find which widget to render, and we'll just say build shape. It's actually build display, which is rendering a shape. This thing we can say, hey, we intercept you. I know what you're trying to build. Let me get it from the cache.
But that invokes drivers, and it
yes,
can be
and
any.
the driver is just returning a lambda with a shape, and then when the shape, maybe we need to refactor the widget so that it's actually the code is in the rendering of the shape, so we know we can spare the rendering.
Yes, exactly.
That's it, and not run the code in the driver itself, but in the rendering of the shape, which you should do already. You should not render the shape before it's returned. It should
no,
be
it returns a factory. Yeah, exactly.
So that will work.
But yeah, but you would still load all the content menu items, the menu item content items.
Maybe we need to refactor that to be part of the lambda, because it should.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
You know?
Okay. Currently, no, that's not the case. First, you need all the menu content items, and then you invoke build display on each content item, and that invokes the drivers.
And each menu item also can be cached or not. It's about it's a big tree of shapes, and each node in the tree will have some cache metadata. And we need something which will browse the tree and extract. And by the way, the main node will inherit also the cache metadata from its children. So if you say a child node, a leaf node is not cacheable, then you can't cache anything, okay, in the full tree. Or if we have this notion of we can extract the parts which are not cacheable and then render a placeholder which will delay the rendering so that we can pipeline the rendering. We can do that.
Okay.
But Sebastian, so if a leaf node in the tree is not cacheable, then that doesn't mean that you can't cache the rest of the stuff in the tree.
Correct. We'll have placeholder like we mentioned earlier with edge side includes. It will be something like that. And this edge side includes can then use the BigPipe protocol, can then use Ajax calls and things like that.
Yeah. If there's any prioritization to be done between these concepts, I think what would yield the absolute most value and the coolest thing out of everything that you've mentioned is that the shape tree dynamic caching.
Output cache is the simplest thing to do and is necessary. Shape tree might replace completely the output cache. It will be slower for sure, but it could already be a good solution even for anonymous sites, because at the end, the main tree will be cached. The main root will be cached. Sure. So we could even have the shape tree cache replace the output cache, because the layout itself is just a shape. So it could just be the shape. This node cached will be the output cache. If you see what I mean. Because caching the layout shape is actually caching the page. Or maybe we'll say don't cache the layout. I don't know, something like that. Good. So that's all. That's why the demos on Orchard 2 this week were short. I have more thought about things than actually done things. What did I miss in the chat? Questions, or should we wrap up the meeting now? Yeah, 2 weeks maybe. Rails 4, I need to check that then. Yeah, AMC has some shape caching too. Feel free. I will try to write everything down on Gitter to make this discussion public, and feel free to write something, to tweet, to email Open Issues on Orchard 2, to go to Gitter to exchange about that. Thanks everyone. Did I miss anything? So, okay. Good. See you on Thursday.
Bye bye.
See you on Thursday.
Bye, guys.